And we're back in the studio with Justin Farren from Wargaming and Oleg Nesterenko. He is the managing editor of GameWorldObserver.com. Hey guys, how are you? Hi, Oleg.
Hi, Igor. Thanks for having me. Super excited about this.
Hi, Justin. How are you doing?
Doing great. Really excited to be here today and excited to share, my perspective on the industry.
Perfect. So I think it's going to be super interesting fireside chat. Oleg and Justin, good luck. I'm passing my word to you.
Thank you, Igor. I didn't realize we're going to be the first people to speak to kick off this conference today. So such an honor.
Yeah, like guinea pigs.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Justin, hi again. Thanks for being with us. I don't know if you realize that, probably not, but you and I go way back, all the way to December 2019, actually. We did an interview before, but it was just me sending over the questions and you answering them with even less human interaction than we can allow ourselves right now. This is like a reunion, so which makes me all the more excited. Anyway, so Justin, when I just look at people in this industry, what things that never ceases to amaze me is just what kind of different backgrounds people come from. And your career path of all people was just one of the most unique ones, I would say. So you spent 8 years with Air Force as a special operations analyst. You did several tours during the Gulf War. Is it something that helps you right now as a video games professional in your work with developers?
Well, I went in when I was very young. I enlisted when I was 17. And I think the number one thing that it's carried with me is, a sense of structure and organization. And I think probably the biggest lesson I learned in that job and other jobs I've had is not to take it so seriously. There are people who do really difficult jobs around the world. And it reminds me that my goal, my number one satisfaction in making games is bringing joy to people, letting them immerse themselves in worlds and really to be able to escape some of the difficulties that people have in life. And I do take it pretty seriously, but it's also a reminder that there are much tougher walks in life. And what we do is really great. I'm really blessed to be in games industry, and I never take it for granted.
And the military experience, of course, makes all the more sense now that you're part of Wargaming, the company that is famous, right, for its war games.
Yeah. I mean, I served at the end of the Cold War. So, obviously, I joke with some of the guys at work about joining the other team sometimes about, seeing how their perspectives are about that time in history has been really, really enlightening. And it's one of the best things about living here in Minsk as well, is to hear those perspectives and the history from their eyes and from their experiences.
Yeah, that's quite a journey, but the list goes on of cool things about you. You're also a professional wrestler. I'm saying you are, as opposed to you were, because as far as I understand, like just you never give up on that career.
Yeah, I was actually, before the pandemic outbreak, I was supposed to wrestle for IPW during WrestleMania weekend in Orlando. Yeah, I'm up on 50 now, so I probably shouldn't be doing it, but I try to stay in shape and stay busy. Last year, I was able to compete in the Rages in the Cage, which is an annual event in IPW Florida, and actually I won. So I didn't win many matches, but I was able to win last time, so that's really exciting. And I've been able to in my career in wrestling, wrestle a lot of people that I really looked up to as a kid, and at the end of their careers, and it was been just an amazing experience to do that. It's never anything I thought I would do.
You said that you wrestled some people who you admired as a kid. Does it mean that you had to go up against old timers?
Yeah, I mean, guys some of the guys were my age now that I thought, oh my God, I don't want to break him. He's an old man. But, I was able to wrestle King Kong Bundy, Wildfire Tommy Rich, Demolition. I got to wrestle some of those guys, and a lot of stars from the 90s, and even some guys that are on TV right now, including like Roderick Strong, who's on NXT. He's been a champ there, Ring of Honor champ. I'm really lucky to have wrestled guys far more talented than me, and it's just I have no complaints about wrestling in general, about what I did, or I got to wrestle in almost 15 countries. It was awesome.
the next level of cool, just beyond cool. Kick-ass, absolutely. Well, let's talk about video games, right? So now you are an executive producer at the MS studio, right? The MS-1 studio.
MS-1 studio here in Memphis, with Wargaming.
A Wargaming studio behind the World of Tanks Blitz mobile game. So what is it that you do there? What is that executive producers do?
Well, as anybody in the industry will tell you, producers have different roles and different levels of responsibility depending on the needs of the company and also depending on the strengths of the producer themselves. My main goal, and I would say universally in the industry about production, is to be able to guide a product towards its objectives. And that is usually twofold. It has to do with people and product. And making sure that the vision of the game is established, is communicated and spread throughout all of the people who are going to make the game, and to move forward the product and the team towards that objective. And it's also important not to just look at what the company is trying to achieve, but look at the collective needs and the desires and the ambitions of the people that you're working with. Like, that's how you get the most amazing product, is by understanding what people want to achieve and helping them be successful. I think the number one goal of a producer is to remove roadblocks for people far more talented than us, smarter than us, and oftentimes more capable than me as a non-direct contributor would ever be. So my job is to get all the things out of their way and let them be as successful as possible.
But before Wargaming, there was Activision, there was Microsoft, there was Ubisoft. Again, you were in a role of producer there. I wonder if that meant different things from company to company.
Absolutely. Totally. I think that one thing that's I've learned throughout, my experience in games industries is that every company has different things that they want to achieve, a different mark that they want to leave, whether they're publicly traded or privately. I'd say if you were to ask me the differences, EA was very focused on the marketing message. They call it the X, and how they can market their products and their game towards their market. And they would identify features and new systems and new ideas that they wanted to bring to life. At Microsoft, it was very focused about supporting the brand, the pillars, and the platform, making sure that Xbox Live and at the time the Kinect was really embraced by their audience and encouraging developers to support those brands. And Activision very much focused on being fiscally successful and building long-term brands that can support the ambitions of the company. And from their perspective, Ubisoft was unique, and it's one of the things that drew me to Wargaming. The similarities: Ubisoft is very much focused on the player experience and creating something that is going to be fun and from a player's perspective, something that is identifying what's important to them. Wargaming has a lot of the same things that really drew me to that. It's the idea that we want to make amazing games that are culturally transformative, that are impactful to audiences for years to come. And I'm super excited to be able to do that. I'm not being told to try to build games that are going to make X amount of money. The idea is we make amazing games, we build amazing experiences, and naturally success will follow if we're able to keep that in mind and keep that on the forefront of our priorities. Yeah,
you said earlier in one of your interviews that the job of a producer at its worst can be like herding cats, which I liked immensely. So what would be your advice? How do you avoid that? And maybe if you could just share some of your worst experiences in the role of a producer, if you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main challenge there when I said herding cats is if you do not very early on coalesce everyone's objectives, if you don't identify what we want to achieve together, and you don't build a common vision that everybody can take from one person to the other and embrace it as if it's their own and to give voice, then you have people moving in all sorts of different directions. And it's not something you can just do at the beginning. You have to constantly reinforce that message, and you have to continually evaluate and when necessary, adapt and change that vision where it needs to be changed to be able to move forward. I've had, some very challenging projects. Primarily, I worked with an external developer out of Canada that, had built one or two amazing games, and they were just really not capable of doing what we wanted them to do. and they had a vision for the type of games that they wanted to make, and we were unfortunately dealing with a very big license, and that license demanded that you adhere to the principles of the license, and it was a real challenge for us to get them to do that. Ultimately, it was negatively impacting the quality of the game, how well it sold. And when you have a licensed product, for example, you want to make sure that all of the audience that loves that license is served. And that's primarily where the challenge came in. I think in retrospect, if we were to build a game like that again, the main thing would be to find a developer that is just as passionate about that license as the licensor, and to build that strong relationship where a developer can embrace the vision of that license and make it as successful as possible. If people care about it, they're going to invest and put the right people on it and make decisions that are in the service of the license.
Passion, that's what it all boils down to.
100%.
Yeah, thanks. Is there like a perfect structure, a perfect scheme, that you try to follow for how the game development process should be structured?
No. I don't think there's any one way to make a game. And you look around in the industry, there are tons of people doing different things and different approaches. And you have to understand what your team is capable of, first and foremost, and be able to understand how to maximize their talents. For me, the goal should be to try to roadmap your game or your product to go live, if it's a live service game, based on the capabilities of your team. For my current team, I have guys who are super passionate about our IP and about our genre, and we're making sure that we answer a lot of the questions up front before we go heavy into production. Like, we understand the roadmap that we want, how we're going to service our customers, what our meta is going to be, our progression models, moment-to-moment gameplay, and also, most importantly, you mentioned I'm an MS-1. We are a mobile studio-focused group. We want to leverage the strengths of the platform. It's an entirely different experience, when you're dealing with something like this versus a console and a PC. And we want to make sure that whatever experiences we're building, we answer a lot of those questions, both technical and design and usability, before we start, going down the road of production and our roadmap to launching.
Yeah. So hopefully you have a passionate team, but then, so how do you even make sure that the vision for the project is aligned across the team? And as far as I understand, that MS-1, you are in charge of a team that is distributed, right? Which is like super relevant right now in the times of the COVID-19 pandemic. So
yeah,
what's your experience here?
Well, I've worked on a couple of different game teams that did worldwide distributed development, primarily Assassin's Creed. I worked on several Assassin's Creeds, and as you know, they use up to 7 studios to make an Assassin's Creed, and sometimes over 1,000 people touching that game in multiple time zones. So there are challenges for sure, but ultimately the benefits far outweigh the challenges. You're able to bring lots of different perspectives. You're able to have around-the-clock development. You bring lots of cultural input, experience from around the world that you might not necessarily get if you restricted it to a region, especially something like Minsk, which is just growing and evolving now. We're able to work with multiple studios. Right now, we work with Moscow and Berlin. In addition to the challenges we have with the pandemic, we have people who haven't been able to relocate and move into the offices, and the challenges are they're different than they were 10 years ago. Communicating online, using online tools and methodologies to share real-time ideas, how we handle our code, our check-in, our code reviews, even play tests. All of those things are just naturally done online, and the developers of today have adapted. That's how they do most of their communication. So it's been incredibly successful so far. We'll see. I'm sure we'll have lots of unique challenges that are specific to that remote working structure, but ultimately, I think this is the way that games are going to be made more and more going forward. And for MS-1, it's a mandate for us to start growing multicultural and multi-location strengths. It also allows us to be able to service other products. So when we start new products and new teams around the world, they can leverage our tech, leverage our expertise, and support those other projects as well.
And the team, you said, being multicultural, is it more of an advantage or a challenge?
It's both. I mean, the challenge is there's obvious ones. There's language. There's nuanced things. How people view management, how people take feedback, how people view the hierarchy of an organizational structure. Every culture is different. But the benefits are great. You bring people who have lots of different backgrounds. They have perspectives from their upbringing, their socioeconomic backgrounds. Even the way that they view something like an RPG or monetization. You have lots of different perspectives, and those allow you to identify the best solution for that audience. At MS-1, one of the main things that we're trying to do here is to grow our Western audience and make sure that we can take advantage of the fact that this is the biggest market in the world for console gamers, and for mobile games, it's one of the largest growing markets. It's important that we understand that those markets require a particular application, of how the games are built to be able to fit their needs and make sense to them, to feel right from a UX and UI perspective. All those things require lots of different inputs. That's why we're building that multicultural team.
You said that as an executive producer, you are not directly involved in the creative process, but you also you've had that experience, right? At Ubisoft Singapore, you were a creative director on a title called Skulls and Bones, right?
Skull and Bones. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a player experience producer, whether I'm, executive producer, development director, or even creative director. I am, focused on the player experience. That's how I can be most effective. The difference for me between this role and other roles is I really want to grow my core team. I have a lot of guys on my team. This is their first time being a lead or first time being in a position where they're able to direct those teams. And I want to grow them into be able to reach that next level. I think that at this point in my career, I get a lot of satisfaction from seeing people be empowered and to be able to show that they're capable of bringing new experiences to players. I always want to empower them and not be a dictator. I want to make sure that they understand that it's a shared direction that we have on our games. And I prefer to be an arbiter and help drive towards the solution instead of providing the solution. It makes us much more robust, much more capable if we have lots of people with a strong voice and strong empowerment.
I talked before to one executive who said that good producers are always in short supply across the globe. Would you agree with that? And if yes, then so what's your take on it? What would you say that is the case?
Yeah, good producers are in short supply. I think it takes humility to be a good producer. It takes the ability to not delegate, not tell someone to do something, but to help them find the right paths and right solutions, and also not to be critical of problem solving. But our goal is not to put out fires. Our goal is to prevent fires. That's the number one difference between a junior producer and a senior or executive producer or product director, is to anticipate and plan so that you can avoid a lot of those pitfalls. And some of those are things that you can only learn through time and experience and failure. And I think if you look at our industry, where we can be better and more proactive in production of games, is to embrace failure and say that it's okay to make mistakes. And the problem is not making mistakes. It's what do you do next, and how do you avoid the next pitfall, so that you can keep yourself on the right path from the beginning.
Yeah. So could we at all talk about what is it that you do at Wargaming? We know that it's a mobile title. It's probably not a dating simulator because it's Wargaming and all. So
well, it was originally a dating simulator, but no.
Oh, was it? Well, that's
no.
Okay.
Yeah, our game is unannounced still. But I can tell you that there's two things that we're doing. The first is we are trying to build something that appeals to the Western market, that is transformative, it's impactful, and we want it to be in our genre. We want it to be the definitive game, the game that people copy, the game that people say, that's the game I want to be on mobile. Call of Duty made a leap to go to the platform, and now you see lots of other shooters popping up as well, once they see that it's viable on that platform. The other thing we're doing is leveraging what Wargaming has always been really great at, creating large-scale communities, creating online shooters that are competitive in nature, that have the ability to create stable matchmaking. That's been the strength of our studio and our company. And we want to leverage those strengths. We're not building a team that's comprised of outsiders and expats. We're using really talented people who have worked on World of Tanks and World of Tanks Blitz, and using the lessons that they had, how to service your community and how to build a large scale live service game for years and years to come with our new take, our new genre.
Other people I talked to from Wargaming, they said that, yes, obviously it starts with a game, but it's also about creating cultures around games. Well, or a culture, the overall Wargaming culture.
For sure. Yeah. I think our team, we are unique in that we are different than other World of Tanks or, Wargaming teams, especially here in Minsk. We're loud. We're always getting scolded for having super loud play tests every day. We're very passionate about our game. We are a very close team. We eat together. We party together. We are trying to make sure that we're building something that is inclusive, where everyone feels that they have a voice and an opportunity for success. And we want other teams, to look at us as an example. We want to be a benchmark for MS-1 and for Wargaming in terms of inclusivity and creativity. And we're learning from them too. We don't think we have nothing to learn from, big tanks, as they call the World of Tanks or World of Tanks Blitz. We have lots to learn from those teams and their successes, but we want to offer something that is definitely more inclusive. I want tons of people to look at Minsk and say, wow, I wish I could come work with Justin. I wish I could work on that project. We are hiring, so if there's anybody out there who wants to come and do something different and experience something amazing in Minsk with Wargaming, just send me your resume. Don't send me my resume. I already have it.
Okay. Generally, well, obviously the ambition here is to create a AAA title, but on mobile. And while that has been, well, the industry in general has been embracing, obviously, this platform, which is like the biggest, accounts for the biggest revenues on across basically all platforms. But still, what's your take on creating a AAA experience on mobile?
It's never been more possible than now, for sure. I think that there are still some technical limitations if you want to reach as many people as possible, but it comes down to a lot of the things that you learn in making AAA in terms of realization, fidelity for the game, ease of use, onboarding, all of those things that you come to expect on a AAA game or console or PC. There's also this break away from requiring everything to be in the actual game. You can have trailers. You see that with Overwatch. You see a lot of their backstory, their world narrative that's exposed, and the exposition takes place on YouTube or through cinematics. All of those things allow you to continually build on that AAA experience. They're not restricted to putting it on the mobile devices. And the mobile device is really about taking care of the customers and hand-holding them from the beginning of the time that they walk in the door, and treating them like a lifelong customer, and bringing them into the world, letting them fall in love with the world, letting them have their voice. A lot of those games that you talk about, the big brands that I've been able to work on, the passion and the relationship between the player and the brand is what makes those brands most successful, but without question.
Yeah, but do you have then to keep your vision in check, given the limitations of the mobile platform, or just in case at least of the project that you are working on, that just the right platform for it in terms of visuals and in terms of controls?
Yeah, there are some limits, right? Fidelity of controls and tactile inputs are not to the same degree that you have on a mouse and keyboard, and that's true between PC and console. So you have to leverage what's easy and what's awesome about mobile, and you have to leverage those controls in a way that don't get in the way of the player. They're not barriers. One thing that I always remind my team and designers is remove friction from the player's experience. If something is difficult for the player to do, like if it's hard for them to aim, then look for another way to make that player feel smart. Aiming is a way, aiming your weapon or aiming your tank towards your enemy and connecting is super satisfying, right? It's a fundamental base level of satisfaction that you get from being successful at it. Okay, well, on a mobile screen, that's a challenge. So how do you bring that same experience to a player? You give them abilities and tools, and you give them a toolkit that allows them to have that same level of success and feel that satisfaction of learning a system and learning how to be successful at it and rewarding them. And then from there, you have to increase that skill cap to the point that players who are investing a lot of time, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of their skill and development of those skills on that platform, that they're rewarded by being better than someone, by putting in the time, by learning the systems, by adapting to what they experience in moment-to-moment gameplay. All those things can be done on mobile. They're just done in a different way than you would with mouse and keyboard.
Yeah, cool. Probably one last question from me, and then we can maybe have some time for the questions from our
Sure.
viewers. In that interview that I referenced earlier that we did before that you didn't know that we did, but we did. One thing you said that, given how obviously you are now in live games and how the industry in general is now pretty much about live games, one title that you in particular keep getting back to is Skyrim, obviously. So what is it then that keeps you returning to this ultimately single player singular experience?
Yeah, I mean, I played Elder Scrolls Online as well. I'm a big fan of the universe. I think for me, what draws me back into Skyrim and those type of games is the fact that the interactive level of that world, the systemic nature and unpredictability of it, I'm constantly surprised. I'm constantly surprised by the way that moment to moment experiences unfold that I didn't predict. And that's kind of what we're doing on my project here at MS-1 is bringing a lot of the unpredictability and a lot of those moments that surprise you, that genuinely put a smile on your face because you didn't anticipate it to happen. That happens constantly in Skyrim. Sometimes it's ridiculous and absurd, but it's never boring. It's not linear, and the linearity of it of some RPGs is a turnoff for me. I like the open world nature of systemic gameplay.
Any bottom line last minute advice to any fledgling executive producer who might be watching this?
I think the number one advice I can give to people who are in this industry in my role is hire people that are smarter than you. Hire people of color, hire women, get different perspectives from people who are misrepresented or underrepresented in our industry. The most important thing we can do as developers is give voice to people and empower them and to tell their stories. I want more games, diverse games, richer games. I don't want homogeny. I want just a ton of different things to choose from. We are the industry right now that has the most to offer people in terms of interactive and entertainment, more than anything on the planet. And if there's anything positive about having to be locked down or locked in quarantine, is we have a captive audience. And we can show them what's amazing about our industry. I wish my game was out right now and I could put it in the hands of gamers and get them excited about it, but it'll come. And that's my advice: is empower people that are different than you, that are smarter than you, that have different backgrounds.
Thanks, and hopefully when your game does come out, people play it not because they're just stuck home, but because it's fun.
It's fun now. I mean, like I said, we play every day on our team, and we're super excited about the direction of MS-1 and wargaming in general. And people are going to be really surprised by what we're putting out there.
Yeah, well, thanks. That was super instructive and inspiring. And Yegor, I don't know if you can hear us, but if you do we have any more questions from our audience?
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was great to listen to it too, and we do have a couple of questions from the lectures chat. Actually, it's on fire. Everybody is super excited about the talk, and people are very cheered up to see Justin and you, Oleg. Thank you once again for this great conversation.
Thanks, Oleg.
And we have questions. I'm gonna name the people who are asking them just to bring their a second of fame. So the first one is coming from Anna Rubtsova, and she asks us, Justin, how do you feel about the overall changes in the MMO games, And what, from your perspective, would be the next big thing in the industry?
I mean, I'm an old school MMO player. I was a UO pre-alpha, Ultima Online pre-alpha gamer, and I basically for 15 years played every MMO that came out, good and bad. And I think that the MMOs opened up the doorway for creating online and live services games that allowed players not to have closure with the universe, but to continue to evolve and experience it, and not just experience it, but add to the fabric and add to the story and narrative of that world. I'd like to see a lot of those things continue outside of just the MMO and RPG genre, so that players have a more persistent relationship with shooters. You see some of that stuff with that they tried with games like Anthem, Apex, and other games like that. Yeah, I would love for that to be, the direction. Where do I see games going in general is less differences between the experiences that you have in front of your PC and your console and mobile. And a lot of the games that you experienced only on PC, they're going to have in some way, shape, or form a presence on mobile platform. That seems super obvious to me. That's going to integrate that, as well as real world data, live time geo data that's infusing into our player experiences that allow us to basically interact with a lot of the cultural things that are happening, societal things that are happening real time around the world. Those things are happening now, and they're going to continue to evolve and be more seamless.
Thank you very much. All right, so the next question is coming from Wina Lee, and she has a very interesting question, which I'm more than sure is very popular among the viewers of Tones and Games Conference. So they ask us, Justin, you has mentioned that you are a wrestler, and like this is a very important part of your biography. So what exactly helped you to make this transition from one industry to a completely different one?
Well, I got into wrestling because I was really fat, and I wanted to lose weight, and I had this opportunity to go to a personal trainer, and I spent time with that personal trainer for weeks and weeks, and they were yelling at me and the other students, and I thought it was like a boot camp, and then one day we got in the wrestling ring, and I was like, okay, all right. I really didn't decide to be a pro wrestler one day. I happened to be getting my ass kicked and trying to get into shape, and it ended up being a wrestling camp. It was a total surprise, but I stayed with it. I fell in love with it. I think the transition from going from one career, project management, my military background, and wrestling is follow the things that are tied to your passions. I've always loved games since I was a child. Games for me are defining, and they're social experiences. They bring people together, and that's all I really wanted to do in my whole life. And eventually I was able to find a way into games. It's a lot different now. Now there are classes you can take, there are degrees that you can achieve. But even if you don't have one of those degrees, if you have talent, you can develop your portfolio. You can have a way into the industry just by showcasing it. Never has that been more true than now. You have tons of sites, resources, engines that you can download and learn, allow you to express yourself. All of those things are way more true than they've ever been.
All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot. So it's like the perfect time right now to learn new things online, and you don't need to even go anywhere. And this conference is like the living proof of that this is true. Thank you. So the next one is Roman Kolesnik, and he asks you to comment a little bit more on the role of the game producer. What exactly do you do, and like do you drive the entire way how the game is being developed, or do you mostly comment on like people's everyday tasks? Like how does it look like?
It depends. I mean, normally there are different levels of production in terms of your responsibilities. Obviously, I'm the arbiter for everything for our project at the top level. But I've done all of the things that you mentioned. I've done project schedules. I've done task management on an individual basis. I think that producers are the most effective when they identify the needs of their team members and then can get out in front of those things to help them, whether it's through scheduling, removing, like I said, removing those roadblocks, making sure that the resources that they need, the team members they need to complete their features and systems, that you're aligning them and making sure that people are talking. Encouraging cross-discipline communication is super important as a producer. Being able to collect important data and then inform the rest of the team about the direction of an individual team is also part of our focus. And also to understand the needs of the company. We are beholden on some degrees to the ambitions and the requirements of our company. So that means we have to understand what they expect of us from a P&L perspective to make sure that we're using our man hours effectively, our time that we have, to make the games, and keeping them abreast of changes. Things change. There's lots of things that you don't foresee and that you learn during the development process. And the most important thing is being able to adapt to those changes and be able to continue to move forward. It's not a job where you say, these are the 20 things that I do. I can tell you what my day is. My day is I come in, I make sure everyone's talking, communicating, that we're starting with a positive attitude every single day, that we understand what the day's objective is, and that day's objective aligns with our milestone objectives. And when it doesn't, I challenge people to question what they're working on, to question their priorities, and to make those changes themselves. That's not something I should do every single day. I should empower people to be able to make those changes so that I can trust everyone, whether they're a junior animator to a senior technical artist. All of those people should be in align with our objectives for product and company.
All right, thanks a lot. So we have actually many questions related to how to switch from some other industry to games industry. So I think it would be wise to ask Justin to just give one last recommendation for people willing to join games industry. Should they do it, or like maybe you should avoid and just stay away from here and leave some places for us?
No, I think there's a lot of similarities in other industries in terms of project management, basic understanding of Agile and Scrum methodologies, waterfall methodologies, software development principles. There are quite a few skills that are transferring, being able to facilitate communication, being able to document and understand how people what they need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly milestone basis. It's not as difficult as you think. I came from software development before I got into video games, and the number one thing I did, I know it sounds crazy, but from being a project manager in web project manager, I just changed the title on my resume to producer. And the skills I had were the same. The responsibilities I had were the same. Managing people from multiple disciplines, understanding the objectives of a software developer, an animator, an artist, another project manager, a QA engineer. They all have different objectives within their personal sphere and their professional sphere, and trying to really spend time to understand what someone wants to accomplish is the same in any industry where you're managing a project. And the only difference is really just positioning all of those skills down to those base skills that I talked about, communication, problem solving, and understanding long-term objectives, and making sure that people understand those objectives and repeating it over and over until you're a broken record. Like, until you should be repeating your objectives, the creative vision, the product vision, until you're sick of your own voice, until they're repeating it back to you. You should never assume that someone understands the vision of your game, your product, your project. You should make sure that they tell you, I get it. I know it. Let me tell you it. Or if you hear someone telling another new person on the team, for me, that is like my favorite thing in the world. I can just be like, great. I don't need to jump in. They got it. They get it. Those are the things I try to do. And I'm sure I sound like an old broken record to some of my team members. Like, yeah, I've heard this story a million times. Well, great. Then you get it.
Great.
Yeah, all of those skills are transferable. They're not just for games. Games needs people like that. If you have those skills, the industry needs you.
Great. Thanks a lot. This is so inspirational, and I hope we will see many people transferring from some other industries to games. And thanks a lot for these recommendations. Guys, stick to them. Oleg, thank you very much for driving this discussion. Justin, thanks a lot for coming.
Yep.
We actually have many more questions from the audience right now. So, Oleg, Justin, we would appreciate if you log into wnhub.io right now and go to Q&A section to just chit chat with people a little bit, or maybe answer some more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Bye, guys.